Mr. McGee, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
You are about to listen to the Totally Super Awesome 80s Reboot Overdrive podcast.
This podcast is our fan tribute to the Incredible Hulk TV show. Be advised it has been exposed to radiation and we caution to listen at your own risk. You have now entered GammaCast.
And welcome to the GammaCast. I'm your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me as always is my skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Hey, Mozz. Welcome once again. Always glad to have you. This is The Incredible Hulk, episode 17, season 3, The Lottery. David Becker befriends reformed con artist Harry Henderson, who buys a winning lottery ticket in David's name. After Henderson collects the money, he starts to set in motion the one big scam he always dreamed of. Directed by John McPherson, written by Ellen Cole, Chris Brunch, and story by Daniel B. Ullman this week. Real good bit here. I just want to give some of our shout-outs to some classic actors throughout this.
Now, Officer Clark, the officer, didn't he kind of look like the guy who plays the Falcon in the Avengers?
Oh, well, his name is David McKnight. I don't think he's any relation to, now I'm going to sound foolish because I don't know the name. I want to say his name is Terrence Mack, who plays the Falcon.
Yeah, I think something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
But he looked just like him, didn't he?
He looks a little like him, I guess. I'm very bad with faces, so... he has been a lot of shows, this actor, David McKnight. He was in, like we always get with these, you get these guys who are just these working actors in every episode of every show out there. He was in 2 episodes of 227 back in 1987 and 89. He was in, he played Max in the War of the Worlds TV series, one of my favorite TV series. Never got the recognition it deserved. Let's see here. He was in Hollywood Shuffle in 1987. Played Uncle Ray. He was in Hill Street Blues. Did a couple episodes. He played a police officer again in Moonlighting. He was in Benson. 2 episodes. And of course, here he is, Clark, the police officer, in 1980, The Incredible Hulk. Here's the guy I think I was looking for, Louis Avalos, who comes in at the very end as the first official, but of course has a great thing. He's a guy that you do recognize very quickly. He has been in a lot of shows, Full House, You Again, he was in Fresno. If anyone remembers the short-lived 1986 sort of comedy soap opera called Fresno. He was Lieutenant Gomez in I Had 3 Wives back in 1985. He was in 1948 and 1985. He was Dr. Thomas Esquivel in ER. He played Jesse Rodriguez in Condo, if you remember that short-lived 80s sitcom. He had several characters on Barney Miller. He had several characters on Soap back in 78 to 81. Yeah, he's one of those actors you immediately see, oh yeah, that guy again. He was on The Electric Company, which is where I recognized him from too. He was in that was the 2000s when he was in Columbo. I'm trying to see what his but he was one of the reoccurring actors in Electric Company. which as a young man growing up in the 80s, I watched all the time. Robert Hogan, of course, is our con artist, Harry Henderson, which I thought was really interesting that you had a con artist named Harry Henderson, and, you know, you have, you may recognize him, he plays Judge Hugo Bright as a recurring character on Law and Order. Oh, he also played Judge Albert Skoll. So he's been on Law and Order a lot. That was in the 2000s, of course, the 90s. In the 80s, he has been on several episodes of Murder, She Wrote. He was on The Wizard, which is one of my favorite short-lived TV series of the 80s about a genius toy designer who was also a little person. He played Brad Stevens in You Again, which is a sitcom I don't remember. Mr. Greeley on St. Elsewhere, and of course on Alice he was Greg Stemple, a recurring role back there from the late 70s to the early 80s. He was also in Automan. Again, one of my favorite short-lived sitcoms, short-lived action-adventure shows of the 80s. So let's get to the actual nitty-gritty of this episode, Mozz. David sort of thwarts a robbery by breaking a window to trigger an alarm, which was weird. I get that it was a smart thing to do to trigger the alarm. What was weird to me was when the cop shows up, when Officer Clark shows up, Mr. Henderson doesn't say, "Oh yeah, well I was being robbed and this guy threw garbage can into the window to scare off the burglar." When the alarm goes off, Ian just says, "Oh yeah, no, we just had an accident with the garbage can."
Right. I guess it's all you could think of in the moment, and because his impulse as a career con artist is to lie, he thought that was the safest choice instead of just being honest.
Yeah. Well, that's one of these weird things here, because I guess my take on it was that he just did a real quick con artist's assessment of David and said, "Oh, this guy's on the run," and knew not to involve the cops. Right. I don't know what his tip was, but he made that choice.
He did just save his life, so I guess it'd be a funny way to repay him by ratting him out,
Well, yeah. But it's just, how would he know that he's someone who had something to be ratted out about,
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
I see.
Yeah, but so I write that up to him doing this quick con artist assessment, but then again, there's this secondary aspect of it that kind of makes me go, oh, well, when we get to a little bit later in the show, there's a part that makes you go, oh, did he just figure out the secret? And then later it's like, no, he didn't, although it seemed like he almost did. So basically, David and Harry, they become friends. They become acquaintances. Harry basically says, I need to repay you. Let me, you got a place to stay. You got a job. Come hang out with me. I'll make sure you have a place to stay and money and that whole shtick. He's taking care of David, which is nice of him. And we find out that Harry's a very good cook.
Yeah.
Another situation where someone has that secret talent. We've seen that a couple times in this. A person who is in a field that isn't really where they should be. They really need to. They need to give up this crazy dream they have. We saw that in the boxing episode. He had to give up his crazy dream to be a boxer and just, settle down and be a mechanic, which he was good at. And this one, we have a guy who needs to. Now, in this case, it's a legitimately crazy dream, which is, pulling that big score to mess over the oil companies.
Yeah. Although I will say, opening up his own restaurant probably seems like a way riskier proposition. No?
Well, it is. In all honesty, yes, it 100% is to anyone who knows anything about the restaurant industry. Yes, it is it is a very, very bad idea. Although, if you're, here's what it comes down to, and any attempt like that, any attempt to open up a new business, it is rough. But the fact of the matter is that if you have capital behind him, which he would have from the cop who somehow is getting 20 grand, and if you had a decent enough skill at the business, you actually could, restaurants are not a sure thing by any stretch of the imagination, but they're also not necessarily a bad investment if you know what you're doing.
Sure. And
we do get the information in this that he actually does have some experience in the restaurant industry, having used a restaurant as a front for him for a business of his before. So you have that. So what we do get in his storyline, because we get a little kid who's crying about his sick, dying mother. And he just needs to sell one more lottery ticket to buy her medicine. Delightful. And of course, Harry basically gives him the scared straight talk where he says, no, you're a good con kid. You had it going there, but, here's where you screwed up. He says, and just understands when you screw up, you lose your hand. And he holds up his hand. Which didn't look that messed up, but I guess the way he's holding it's supposed to imply that he has a severely crippled hand from getting it slammed in a drawer by someone. And so he buys the kid's last lottery ticket anyway, and writes David's name on it, David Becker. And of course, due to the laws of narrative contraction, David, of course, wins the lottery. $250,000, which is pretty good. I will say it did not look like there were 250,000 cards in that little hopper, but, who knows how legit this whole thing is. Anyway, so David wins, but, of course, he can't claim the money.
Right.
Because he's on the run. And of course, here Harry says, I knew you were hot, but exactly how hot are you? And David's like, hot enough. He says, well, look, I can find you someone that can go claim your money for you, for a reasonable percentage. And then David says, well, why don't you go get it and I'll give you half. And for what it's worth, Harry basically tells David, don't put me in that situation, man, because I'm going to steal your money. I mean,
he knows he's an addict.
Yeah, well, exactly. He's like, dude, don't, you don't ask Courtney Love to pick up your heroin at the store. I mean, she's clean, I'm sure, but you don't, it's not the best idea.
Right. Why put her in that situation?
Exactly. She's worked so hard, and Harry had worked so hard. But of course, he goes there, puts on the fake does the whole thing, puts on an accent to be a new character, which I loved, by the way. I love that when he does his cons, he really goes.
Yeah.
In. And he becomes, David Becker, a Southern gentleman with a waxed mustache and a full beard.
Right.
And, of course he gets the money and then disappears.
Now, I don't know, I trusted him, even at this point. I didn't see an ounce of bad in him, as far as, at least as far as how he treated David or how he saw peers in the con game or, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, truth be told, he's running his scam.
Right.
And he makes a valid point, because essentially what happens is David realized, and of course we realize that he is running his scam as General Marina, of this, some podunk backwater, dictatorship South America. Yeah. He's presenting himself as this guy who is been put in charge of negotiating the oil rights, and he's going to pull a scam on some wildcatters. And we'll get
it
to
is
that.
Texas after all.
Yeah, it is Texas. It is Texas. Yes.
There's probably a lot of, looking to become the next big oil tycoon.
Exactly.
People there.
And these were definitely your shadier sorts. These were definitely, graduates of the Wharton School of Have You Tried Killing Them Yet? People. So, they are not necessarily folks who are undeserving of getting conned. But of course, David shows up. He does confront him. Well, actually, before David gets to confront him, he has his Hulk out because he's trying to climb up in through the elevator shaft and gets burnt by a hot pipe.
Yeah.
And we get an interesting Hulk out. He gets to burst through walls. He gets to surprise a naked woman in the shower.
And then he just walks away.
Yeah, it's like, what was that about? She it's not even like there's like she screams. She's just like, yeah, okay, you're naked.
Yeah, and then he just like, oh shucks, looks at the floor, smiles, and walks out. We really do have a shy Hulk.
Well, he is a shy Hulk. He is for as much as they give that he is a creature of rage, like I said, rage is just what inspires him. Once he's out, he's his own being, and he is a delightful little scamp.
It was interesting. The Hulk out was great, and him busting through all those hotel rooms was really, really one of the better Hulk out scenes that we've seen in the show. And even the one at the end is so awesome. But it almost felt like the episode was so good, the acting was so good, the story was so good, and it was told so well that we didn't. I wished almost that the Hulk wasn't there, except
I kind of very much felt in this that really the Hulk was very. We always say did this episode need a Hulk? This episode absolutely did not need a Hulk. The Hulk is purely there for contractual obligation, just like Jack McGee.
And even though I tuned in to see a Hulk show, I wouldn't have minded if he wasn't there because the rest of the episode was so good.
Exactly, and actually, speaking of Jack McGee, that gets us to one of these points that I thought was really interesting because, of course, once David does get to speak with General Marina, named after the clams packed in oil, because that's how you know they're good.
Yeah, but on the other end, it's just coincidental that there actually is a real General Marina,
Well, no, I don't think there was.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah, never mind.
Yeah. Because that gets to the thing at the very end.
Right.
With our fellow from the electric company, but here was what kind of bugged me, because so Jack does get to speak to, because Jack's there after the first Hulk out, and he's talking to everyone, and he gets to speak to General Marina. And not for nothing. How do people in Texas not recognize a fake Spanish accent? Because it was not a good Spanish accent. I don't know.
No.
Yes, but anyway, but that's okay. But he's speaking to him, and this was the thing: is he tells him, he's talking about the Hulk, and he's like, "What, the Hulk?" Oh. And of course, they actually get a nice reference to the Hulk in the beginning when Harry is dismissing the idea of a Hulk. And
yeah, which was interesting because like a rival newspaper is putting that on their front page, on page 1, that this other newspaper is wasting time on the Hulk. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, well, because the Hulk is a story, I mean, you may not want to admit it, but it's a story. There's a Hulk out there, and, it's real. It's not like a freaking Sasquatch. This is something where, we've got reliable witnesses, and just like Jack McGee says, I've got reliable witnesses. I've got footage.
Right, but the paper seemed to almost be making fun of them for doing it because, the Fort Worth Chronicle is like their outlook seemed to be that they were just wasting time following like a Sasquatch.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is. I mean that I guess that's the whole crux of the biscuit there. But there's this great scene. So Jack is talking to him about the Hulk, and then he tells him about David. And Jack, for what it's worth, still has not put together the fact that David goes by the name David. That John Doe goes by the name David. Because you would think after proof positive he would have said, so what name was this guy using?
Yeah.
And it'd say David blah, 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 you know?
Yeah.
Interesting.
As many episodes as there have been in, as many times he's investigated situations where David has been there, he would have recognized that name showing up at least twice or three times. By the third time, it probably means something.
Well, yeah, and if nothing else, just the fact that there's always a guy named David, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and like I said, in the proof positive, you had a guy that was willing to talk. You didn't have a situation where, in most cases, everyone didn't want to talk to Jack McGee because they were friends with David. This is a guy who's like, to heck with David. He turns into the Hulk. I'll tell you everything about him. But like I said, that was probably the one time he went by the name, Bo Schembechler. You know. Anyway, so but what I thought was interesting was like he tells him about David, and Harry in the Generalissimo character basically says, "Oh, now I see how your American press distorts the truth," yada yada. But part of me was thinking like he knows that's what David's hot about. I read that because that's how I read that scene. Now, when it actually plays out, we see that no, he doesn't know. So I do wonder if they originally wrote it, that maybe he did figure it out, and then they decided to unwrite it later.
I just thought it was a good bit of him knowing the role, like knowing the intentions of the character you're playing. He was so good at being that con that he knew that, what this person would have said in a situation like this, what his broader motivations are is that, our country this or our country that, you're not looking at it right. So I just thought that was him, doing the research to know the role.
Yeah, and I can see that too. I guess I just don't, when you're writing when you're writing anything, there's always a lot of rewriting, and sometimes you'll write a scene, and then you have to change what you set up in that scene, but you leave it in there anyway because it doesn't hurt anything.
Yeah.
But it was meant to be a clue for something else, and that you later wrote out. So I do wonder if that might have been what you had there. Anyway, so basically, what the general is doing is he's setting up this scam. He's got these wildcatters who are going to get exclusive oil drilling rights for this country that he is saying that he represents. He's used the $250,000 to pay off people to essentially create his own credentials and set up this whole scam. And he makes this point, which I did think was a valid point, which I was waiting for someone to make mention of, that, as soon as he walked off the stage, the IRS was there and they got 50%,
Right.
Because this was back when we used to tax people for being rich. Yeah, and yes, and if you, back in the 80s, if you had a sudden windfall of a significant amount, you owed half of it to old Uncle Sam, which, and it's moments like these that tells you why Republicans were able to get rid of it, because everyone was like, well, what if I won the lottery and I had to give half of my lottery winnings to Uncle Sam? Now, a wise man might say, well, I didn't have anything prior to winning it, and this is a state lottery, so yeah, I guess it makes perfect sense that, the Uncle Sam's going to get his cut. But instead we vote Republican. It's got to get political just a little bit. Anyway, moving right along. So he doesn't have the money. He spent all the what money he had left. He has spent on running this scam. And David is like getting all moralizing here, which I think is a mistake. Now, granted, David doesn't want to get pulled into this. I guess this bad situation.
Yeah, but like David generally doesn't have a problem getting pulled into bad situations. Sometimes he walks right into them, or lets people walk them right into them. So I don't know. To me, it just felt like he was on this moral high horse, and I started really hating him. And I was like, just go with the flow, man. You're a drifter. You're not like a person that has a life on paper that you need to protect. Just go with the flow. And you got a Hulk in your back pocket.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you know what it is? It is a Gilligan off the island moment, Is they're like, we'd love to have this work out, but if we gave David $250,000. You know, it's gonna change the nature of the show. So they couldn't have David get the money, and then the next 7 episodes are him in a lab with a spectrometer. You know.
No. But I mean, I think those are two separate things. Him ending up with the money, and the other thing being whether or not he should want to be a part of something like this. You know, they could have written it so that he said, okay, yeah, let's go with it. This is fun, you know. And then they don't get the money, and we're still back in the same spot, you know, which is still okay and safe. But that really annoyed me. It's like, man, everything is just sit down and shut up for a second. That's it.
And for what it's worth, had he just sat down and shut up for a second, then everything would have been fine.
Yes.
Because that gets us to our denouement, where basically the general has gotten the bribes from the corrupt wildcatters. And
Both of them.
Both of them, yeah. And he tells, you know, David to go wait. You know, wait in the other room. And he's like, no, I won't wait anywhere. I'm going to be right here in the middle of it. And of course, then the representatives of the government rush in and say, you have betrayed the state, and we are going to kill you. You have been tried and will be now executed. Blang, 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 and he falls over dead. And of course, the bad guy wildcatters run, and then but of course, what happens is they have to. When David tries to stop him, they push him into the closet, and that gives him a Hulk out moment. Meanwhile, of course, these guys are all in on the they're all part of the scam. You know, they're all part of the deal.
And they had me going for a good while. I was like, oh, this is exactly what David is going to want to see to have the moral high ground. See, I was right. And blah, blah, blah. But, you know, it didn't end up.
I knew they were in on the scam the minute they walked in.
They caught me, you know.
Okay, yeah. Well, you know, I'm a big fan of con artistry, so I mean, oh yeah, those guys are totally in on it, you know. Because it makes sense that if he's a fake general, they're not going to come after him as a general if he's a fake general, you know.
And then especially on top of that, if he's a dead general, you know.
Yeah. So anyway, but basically what happens is David has a Hulk out and basically ruins everything. Like completely, because it's this thing where, you know, they're getting in that chopper to fly away, and the Hulk comes and does his Captain America moment where he pulls back the chopper.
Yeah.
Which is great. That's a great scene and all, but it's like, you know, it's weird in the sense that basically David or the Hulk causes the problem that then the Hulk has to save Harry from. You know, it's like Harry is in this situation only because of the Hulk. You know, the Hulk has really messed over his situation. And then, of course, you know, everyone else abandons Harry in the chopper when it's about to blow and his seatbelt won't release. And then the Hulk has to save him. But the Hulk wouldn't have had to have saved him if he just hadn't been there. Like, you know, like every problem that you have in this is caused by the Hulk. And he goes, oh no, the money. And of course, but
not even the Hulk. The Hulk was just there because David put him there. The whole problems were caused by David.
Well, yes. I don't necessarily like to separate David from the Hulk. I do feel they are one and the same person. And yes, absolutely, David caused these problems. But the Hulk did cause the helicopter to crash.
Right.
You know, I mean that's the crux of it. Is the Hulk, you know, attacked the helicopter when there was really no reason to attack a helicopter.
Well, I guess there's just like some residual feeling of when he was David and what the goal was in that moment, and he just runs off of that to some extent, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's very much it. I think that very much the Hulk is responding to whatever David's last thought was.
Yeah.
And he does save his friend, which is great, but maybe he shouldn't have put his friend in danger to start with.
Yeah, and to his credit, the first thing, you know, Harry says after the Hulk runs off is, oh, how am I going to explain this to David? So in the end, in his heart, the whole time he was going to cut David in. He was a good guy, you know?
Well, yeah, he was absolutely a good guy, and he absolutely would have cut David in, and which is makes it all the more annoying and weird and complex, and just not for but again, like I said, that was annoying to me because I really thought that after the Jack McGee moment that Harry understood what was going on with the Hulk. That he knew that David was the Hulk. Because he gives a pretty good description of David in that.
Yeah.
You know, and so I could have, and when he gets all upset at him, to me it was like, oh, that's him saying, oh yeah, you know, now I figure out why David's so hot, why David doesn't want to be around here.
Yeah.
But as. Oh, okay. Any final thoughts on the episode? And of course, our big final thing is even though we've lost the money because we had our DSX police officer wanting to invest in a restaurant at the start of the episode, we find out that Harry will go into running a restaurant, and the name of the restaurant, it will be The Last Scam.
The Last Scam.
Which is cute because he does make a point about at the very beginning about how restaurants are a scam, you know, that it's $4.95 to make it, but they're going to sell it for $10. Although obviously that assumes that the people making it that their time has no value. The whole you don't pay for the food, you pay for someone else to make it, someone else to clean it up, and someone else to bring it to you. It's,
right.
That's why you go to a restaurant. Yes, I could make all my food much cheaper at home. It's, it's like going to a bar. It's cheaper to get drunk at home, but you'd like to go to a bar because it's fun to be with people. It's fun, if nothing else, just to have that person bring you your drink and then you drink it. So your butt can be firmly ensconced on your stool and not have to actually get up and go get another beer.
Yeah. You're only thinking about relaxing, not thinking about when you're going to get to relax. Yeah.
But anyway, but he does. So he opens it. So all's well that ends well, and David goes off to another Lonely Man theme.
Yeah.
For no particular reason, for what it's worth. Because that's always this is one of these moments where he could absolutely have stuck around. He could worked in the restaurant.
Although every time Jack McGee shows up, that area is pretty much ruined to him because he's going to start snooping around.
Yeah, but Jack McGee's snooping around the hotel. San Antonio, it's not that small of a city. I think it was San Antonio that they're in. But it's not that small of a town. Unless the restaurant is right next door to the Excalibur, But again, like I said, then every episode is let's go see what dishes David washes this week.
Yeah. Although he can't seem to, get too far without finding some trouble. David's real good at that.
Yeah, and that's the thing when you have a Hulk in the back pocket. And for what it's worth, if he was working in a restaurant, first lunch rush, there's a Hulk and it tears the place apart. It's and hopefully they had bought Hulk insurance. Okay, so Mozz, any final thoughts on the episode?
I thought this was one of the best episodes by far. It felt like a movie condensed into a show. It had all the twists and turns and surprise endings. And even though we didn't need the Hulk scenes that we did get were pretty awesome. Like him holding on and bringing that helicopter down, as silly as that was when he brought it down gently and laid it down, and all of a sudden, hey, it's gonna blow. But I guess you're limited by what you can really do. But the fact that he was actually there holding on to a flying helicopter, I thought was really, really cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. And me, I'm always a sucker for any con artist storyline. So
yeah,
you had me at con artistry, and that was great. And like I said, it's just weird to me that it's Harry Henderson and then Harry Anderson, who is a magician and not a con artist per se, but certainly a man who has written a lot about the art of the con. Struck me as very. I just found that interesting, especially since we just had Marky Post on a couple episodes ago. So it's like, it's all connected. Okay.
One final thing that I thought was really cool that they threw a nod to Blazing Saddles in there.
Mm-hmm.
Was we don't need no stinking papers.
Well, actually, that's a nod to Treasure of the Sierra Madre. The Treasure of Sierra Madre, which is what Blazing Saddles was referring on.
Gotcha.
Yes, and that was badges. We don't need no stinking badges. That's from Treasure of Sierra Madre, where you first get that line, where a guy comes in to say, "Hey, we're here to arrest you." Says, "Do you have your badge?" He says, "Badges? We don't need no stinking badges." And in fact, I actually, let me just check that real quick. I don't think it was him, but I just want to just double check to see if he was in UHF, because that would be funny. There's another riff on that in the film UHF, where they talk about badgers, and he says, "Badgers, we don't need no stinking badgers." I'm looking for UHF. And no, it wasn't him. That was another Hispanic actor. I didn't think it was him, because I think he would have been too old for that by then. But and this was a younger guy, and actually, sadly, that guy died in a drunk driving accident, which is why Will Yankovic does not endorse beer.
Wow.
Yes, because the very talented actor who played Ramon in Ramon's Wild Kingdom in UHF got hit by a drunk driver. And at that time, Weird Al Yankovic was supposed to do a Bud Light commercial, and he said, "I can't do a Bud Light commercial because I can't endorse alcohol."
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the man, Weird Al Yankovic, he's a man of principle. Okay, Mozz, if anyone would like to reach out to you, talk to you about the Hulk or anything else, including Weird Al Yankovic, drunk driving, or Jessica Jones, or Luke Cage, or any Netflix show that we are also reviewing right now on the Nuff Said feed, how can they find you?
They can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com. That's MOZZMANZOOR. You can find me on Facebook under that as well.
Excellent. And, of course, you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email way at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, believe it or not, at gmail.com. And, of course, follow me on Twitter as I live tweet. Oh, I used to live tweet The Incredible Hulk, 7 o'clock on Saturdays on MeTV. I tried to. I actually was all set up to do it this week, but I had to cook dinner on Saturday, and it was like my turn to cook, and it just got over. And I had it on. I'm listening to it. And it's like, oh, I want to tweet that. I want to tweet, and I couldn't. But if you do want to follow me as I live tweet things like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., like Legends of Tomorrow, like The Incredible Hulk, you can always follow me on Twitter at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEssser. Look for the two E's right there in the middle for quality. Okay, thank you for listening with us this week, folks. Please Hulk out with us again.
We hope you've enjoyed this show. This podcast is part of the 80s Reboot Overdrive channel on Southgate Media Group. You can follow us on Facebook on the 80s Reboot group page. We're also on Twitter and Tumblr at 80s Reboot. We invite you to check out all the wonderful podcasts and blogs available at southgatemediagroup.com. And thank you for reliving the 80s.